Hey there and welcome back to another win or lose video. And just the other day we got the final 2 episodes of the season. We're officially in the end game of the story now, which is honestly pretty devastating for me. I love this show so much, and the fact that we might never get any more of it, it's making me pretty damn salty. Oh well. 2 more episodes before all is said and done though. The first of these episodes is titled I Got It and focuses on the character of Kai. Coming into the show, I knew there was a little bit of controversy for 2 reasons. One was that apparently a trans character storyline had been cut, and 2, it had been replaced with a Christianity storyline. And I'm still seeing that getting parroted around quite a lot. Of course, when I started watching the Christianity storyline, turned out to be about a girl struggling with anxiety who briefly prays on the softball pitch. How offensive. So clearly that was always meant to be episode 1, and it became clear to me then they hadn't actually replaced anything. In fact, they didn't actually remove the trans storyline at all. At least I don't think so. The trans character's Kai, who when we meet her is seemingly still struggling with her gender identity. I think what they did cut was overt reference to it, and I think 1 or 2 scenes that dealt with that specifically. So I get why people would be upset, because being openly acknowledged is important and validating. Conversely, I think you'd have to be a massive idiot to not be able to read between the lines and tell what the storyline's actually about. It's literally there from the very beginning. The episode begins in a car trip with Kai and her dad heading towards their new home. Kai looks a lot different to how we usually have seen her, wearing a dark hoodie pulled over her head and with clearly shorter hair, so already we have those suggestions she's trans. She's scratching her name off her old baseball glove. She has her hoodie covering her head like she's ashamed or like she's hiding. Arguably, you could say that the things her dad speaks about in the car are referencing her being bullied for some reason. That being said, the conversation is also a little vague on the details. Her dad references her having a tough time, but doesn't go into the details of what that might mean. Was she bullied? Was it just general struggles? Did she not want to move towns? There's a lot left uncertain, and I suppose it allows the audience to somewhat fill it in themselves with their own thoughts. Ultimately, that's something that I've noticed about Kai's episode more than any other. It doesn't hold your hand and give you the answers, and it leaves so much open to interpretation. Also, he calls her Kai in the car, but the way I interpreted things is that isn't actually her name at first. Because it does feel like later on, the name reveal's meant to be a big moment where she feels accepted by her softball team. And then you combine that with picking the old name off the baseball glove and not seeing what it is, maybe Kai was just a nickname originally. So it seems as if they're going to be staying with her grandma now, and we see the inner conflict right from the get-go. She's interested in watching her grandma's TV programs and recoils a bit when told she's getting big. It's not something you'd usually say to a girl. She doesn't like that her baseball victory pictures are up on the wall, and we start to see her slowly taking them down, hiding one under her bed, one in a pot plant. She doesn't want to take off her hood. She doesn't want to expose herself. So it became very obvious to me that this was the storyline we were dealing with. A character who's coming to terms that they're trans and feeling uncomfortable in their current self. It does make me wonder though, why did they bother to remove any sort of dialogue reference to it within the episode? Do they think it was shoehorned in or something? Like it didn't fit? I don't know. Maybe they were just overreacting and worried they'd get hate. It's just strange because the storyline is very, very obvious. Kai leaves the house to go and check out the neighborhood and finds herself back at the softball training, where she helps Laurie grab a ball and then asks if they need any extra players. She takes up her spot to bat. Ewan strikes her out twice before she gets a hit. The way that everybody reacted with them being shocked and excited, despite the ball only going a couple feet, that was pretty funny. So clearly Ewan is a great pitcher, but it also makes me think that it's very likely a lot of the team isn't all that good, since the coach seemed like he was almost crying to finally have a batter who can hit the ball. As she bonds with the team and feels accepted, she says her name and takes off her hood before floating into the air, which seems to be the main visual motif the episode plays with. Gravity. The happy day doesn't necessarily last forever though, as we cut over to a conversation between Kai and her dad, which is technically about moving from baseball to softball, but which is also obviously not about that. Because the context of this conversation where there's tears and so much angst simply be about changing sports, the way they both react to it would be a little over the top and silly. As a metaphor, it works well though. So yes, it's the talk. All things considered, I think it goes very well. It's a beautiful and heartwarming sequence, with her ending the scene by floating again. We get the title screen, and when we come back, already we can see that things are changing. There's no more dull, muted clothes, we have colour. Of course, her dad's still a little skeptical about her playing softball as opposed to baseball, and so despite her floating around at first, she quickly comes back down to earth. So here, I think you can take a little bit of a double meaning for the scene. On the surface, it is about baseball. He played baseball when he was younger, as his talks with the grandma revealed earlier, and so that's why Kai played baseball. Now Kai wants to move away to a new sport, which is different. That's the surface storyline, that he wants Kai to stick with what she was good at. On a deeper level though, I think it's also a bit of a fear of change. Her dad, whilst accepting of her new identity, doesn't want to lose what he had. He tells her he loves her earlier, yes, that's true, but I think he struggles accepting that it means things will have to change. He projects this onto the baseball. And when he realizes she's going to be in softball, he figures, well, then she has to be the best. She has to be a champion like she was in baseball, hence the very strict coaching and the pressure that he puts on her. At least, that's my interpretation of it. Your views could be different. So here we come to a team building and time skip montage sort of thing. You see Kai's life developing over time, with the Pickle softball team forming the core of her peer group and life in this new place. And you also start to see the effect that this pressure's having on her. When she makes mistakes, she seems upset and flustered, like she's being caught out, like she's letting everyone down. But then her team makes her feel better about herself. She makes friends with the team, she hangs out with Ewan, she hangs out with the girls and becomes accepted just like she wanted to, without needing to force it or to push herself. She comes into her own and finds her fashion sense and style. She finds her place. And this in turn contrasts with her training with her dad and her desire to perform on the field. She feels that to be accepted by her dad, to get his love, she needs to train hard, not make any mistakes, even if it comes at the cost of her own mental well-being and happiness. We see this in a pretty funny scene she shares with Laurie. In that scene, they're just chilling in the field goofing off, making silly noises, pulling silly poses. Oh yeah, this is well and truly taking me back to my childhood. I used to do this kind of thing all the time at the back of the soccer pitch whilst our forwards were whooping ass. So they spend all their time goofing off, as kids do, and so Kai isn't fully focused when a hit comes her way. She still makes her way over to where it's going to land, but she misses the catch, and then she can't follow up and get the ball to Rochelle in time to stop the runner. So she's disappointed, but like I said, she was still having fun with it all. And then she hears her dad raging from the sidelines, staring her down and getting very upset that she didn't stay focused. So in response to this, instead of being all light and floaty, she sinks down into the ground. A visual representation of her being crushed under the weight of her dad's expectations. What I did like though, is that after the game, whilst they show her dad is hard on her and has really high expectations, and even lost his cool during the game, he's also not some deranged asshole parent. When he sees that she's beating herself up about it way too much, he tells her that she needs to dust herself off and move on from it to the next game. So he removes that pressure, which is good, but he doesn't restore that floating, happy feeling. When that comes, that gets restored when she makes that big match-winning play at the playoff game, where she catches somebody out and then gets the ball to Rochelle in time. Here, when she's successful, is when her dad truly celebrates her and restores the feeling. Makes her float, makes her sparkle. So I think it's clear that his arc is going to be about giving her that light feeling outside of just being happy that she won a game or did well. Kind of like with Coach Dan. See the contrast of how they interact with her. Coach Dan's full of praise. Not just for her, but for the whole team. He doesn't bring them down after the win or focus on any mistakes, he just supports them. So when she's done talking to the coach and chilling with her dad, she's floating on air, as you would be. She's all hyped and excited. Only for her dad, in her moment of triumph, to rain down on her parade and bring her back down to earth with taking a deeper look at her mistakes and telling her not to get too cocky, to look forward to the next match. Like I said earlier though, even though he's clearly making a lot of parenting mistakes in this scene, he's not presented as being cold or cut off from Kai either. They do their dance together, they hug. He even says that he's officially going to be coaching the team starting from next season because he knows that she loves the team. And playing softball means so much to her, so he wants to be part of it. So he isn't just some heartless, dumbass dad, as it would be so easy to write him as. He has so much nuance as a character, and it's not even his POV. Such good writing. Of course, this just makes Kai feel even more pressured and anxious, and we see over the course of this one sequence, she's gone from floating on air to being brought back down to earth to now sinking under the weight of it all. Next up, we had what was for me a pretty sad scene, all things considered, where Kai is torn between what makes her happy and living the life that she chose for herself, which is represented by her cuddling her grandma on the couch and watching Real Princesses. And I gotta say, this is a beautiful little 2 seconds. The music that plays, her nana stroking her hair, and just the voice acting from her too. Such a soothing and comforting voice. One that really strikes a contrast between this perspective and the dad's, who's clearly still trying to keep a version of normalcy, to keep in the past. To not lose what he had, as I discussed earlier in the video. Hence the pressure he keeps putting on Kai, who in turn is going to keep going along with it because she doesn't want to lose his love. Man, this episode is hitting hard. We then get the Kai POV of the incident at school with the cheating. Not much to take away from this section other than the fact that Tom's a bit of a dumbass. Don't get me wrong, I love this kid, but he gives up his seat to Kai, and only then does he realize the amount of shit he's in. I love how each episode of this show showcases little details that complete scenes from previous ones. So here they get caught by Frank, which makes her sink into the ground as he's going to be calling her dad about what happened. So she thinks he's going to be disappointed, and it'll just make everything worse. She's once again back in her insecurity hoodie, in which she makes her way to the softball field where she meets up with Laurie. This was actually a pretty interesting scene. When we got it from Laurie's perspective, it's all about Kai helping with Laurie's batting and being very kind and compassionate. Here though, a bit more about blowing off steam, and I kind of felt like she projected a lot of her insecurities into the training session and said them to Laurie. As we know, she gets KO'd by Laurie by accident, but not only that, we see here that she actually injures her ankle too. Man, that looked nasty at first. Whenever I see a joint bend wrongly, whether it's animated or not, it sends a shiver down my spine. No thank you. It was funny to see her POV of getting knocked out though. From Laurie's perspective, her dad rushes in and is very cold towards Laurie, brushing her off and seemingly blaming her for what she's done. It's clear here though that that's not the case. It was simply her anxiety speaking, because from Kai's POV, it's just the coach and Laurie panicking in the exact same way and freaking out. We have one last scene with her dad before the big game, where he tells her off for cheating at school, with her once again feeling pressured to be the best and to be a leader, rather than just being a kid and having fun like Laurie said during their practice. Here we get the bridge from Ewan's episode to Laurie's episode. So when Taylor storms off and Ewan drops the ball with the runners trying to make it home all at once, Kai jumps into action as the team's superhero, and despite having already injured herself earlier, she manages to save the day by directing Tom to get to home base and getting him the ball, stopping one of the runners and keeping them in the game. This leads to them batting, and Laurie actually makes it to first base because she gets taken out by the ball. Now Kai's up, and it's her turn to ensure that they're able to win. She steps up to bat, and Coach Dan has her feeling good, until her dad lays on the pressure and she starts to sink. She gets 2 strikes, although I'm pretty sure they were actually balls, but Frank is in his own head feeling sorry for himself because he threw away his chance at love due to his own fears, and so now it looks like the match is going to go pear-shaped. Kai is sinking. Her dad's not being a great support, and he's putting the onus on her to avoid getting screwed out of the opportunity. In the end though, what happens? She hears her team, her peers, her supporters, cheering for her. They're not telling her she has to win or hit the ball. They just support her, which in turn gives her the confidence to actually play the game. She hits the ball, but then we have the cliffhanger of what happens as her leg buckles once again. Man, what an episode! Shorter than usual this time, but it was a very heartfelt one here. I very much enjoyed it. I'm really curious as to how they're going to wrap it all up though. That's a problem for next time, I suppose. And so for now, I'll just remind you these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of this episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.